Hello, and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Coming up a little bit later in the show, we'll take a look at the Charles Lindbergh Museum in Little Falls, Minnesota. But first, joining me now is new author, Jeff Kopak. Jeff, you're here to talk about Horns Up Inside the Greatest College Football Dynasty. And obviously, we're going to talk about the book in a little while, but let's talk about yourself. Talk about your background, where you're originally from.
Well, I'm from Fargo, and first of all, thanks for having me on. It's almost a bucket list to be on the show, but I'm from Fargo, and actually my lineage goes back in the newspaper business with my father, and my brother works with Associated Press. And I came here in 1991 and got the NDSU beat in 1995. I always wanted to cover Division I football, and in a sense, NDSU was Division II in those days. They did this Division I transition in 2004 is when it started. So I always thought, okay, I'm going to go here and then I'll go to Nebraska or cover Big 12 football. But in essence, I think Division I football came to me when the school went from Division II to Division I. So pretty fortunate in that regard.
Well, how did you get into sports writing?
Well, again, my father was a sports writer for so many years here in Fargo, but I started college in architecture of all things, and I thought, okay, I'm going to be the architect guy, the Mike Brady, growing up in the 70s, and I was sitting in college one day, and I don't want to do it. So I literally got up out of class, went to the registrar, dropped my classes, and then went back to my room and said, okay, got to think of something new. And about 6 months later, a friend of mine got me onto the school newspaper, and that really is how it started.
Well, okay. So it started there. Well, let's turn to the book real quick. We want to talk about the book some. Recently out, came out in August, I believe. Tell us about why you wrote the book and some of the research you had to do for it.
Well, I guess every writer wants to be an author, every newspaper guy, or most of us, I think. But the trick is really, okay, what are you going to write about? And keep in mind that in the newspaper business, we're trained to write 600, 700 word stories. And, so the thought of, okay, 90,000 word story or a book just seemed a little too daunting to me. But I want to say in 2013, my two brothers, my dad wrote a book, by the way, on Bison football. So, and that spanned the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And 2013, my brothers go, I think you should write Dad's sequel. And again, the 90,000 word process I thought just seemed a lot. And I go, I don't know about this. I'll think about it. And eventually it did convince me. But it took some time to really, how am I going to do this? I didn't Google how to write a book. I just decided. I came back after the 2014 national title and just went.
Well, okay. With that said, I mean, is this book mainly about the 5 in a row so far, or did you go back to Don Morton Rocky days and the 60s titles?
No, it's mostly the Division I. If I were to pick a starting point, I would say it's the Montana. In 2003, NDSU's last year's Division II school, they went to Montana, which was the 1AA power, now the FCS, and went in there and upset them. And so I think that is a starting point of it. I go through the transition years with the Division I reclassification. But mainly, yes, it's mostly the title years. And, interesting story on that is I wanted to get it out after the 4th title. So the 2014 season, I wanted to get it out before the 2015 year. And so that would have been after 4 titles, which a couple other programs have done. It wasn't the greatest dynasty. I just didn't get it done. And for a newspaper guy to miss my own deadline was a little... it wasn't a great feeling, but I just, and once football starts, I just shelved it. So 2015 season comes around, and this fellow named Carson Wentz has really come to the forefront here. But then he gets hurt halfway through the season. So I'm thinking, okay, this 5 in a row thought I had, maybe it's not going to happen. Maybe I missed my window of opportunity on coming off the title bandwagon sort of thing. But then Easton Stick wins 8 in a row, the quarterback. Wentz comes back. They win 5 in a row, and all of a sudden I'm going, okay, I'm back in business here on this book at title. So it was a stroke of luck that I didn't make that 4 in a row. I didn't get it out after 4 in a row and waited until they had 5 in a row, because nobody's ever done that. No college team at any level has ever won 5 titles in a row.
Yeah, really. So why has NDSU been so dominant, do you think?
That's a great question, but I think it's because they play football in this era of spread offenses. Everybody wings it around. It's speed, it's finesse, and these guys are a little old school. They still do the power football thing, and I think a lot of teams don't want to play that physical brand of football. By the third and fourth quarters, if you see a lot of games, those 3-yard runs are now 8-yard runs, and I credit Craig Bohl for bringing that style of football to NDSU. We got bigger people up in this area of the woods, and they bring some players from across the country, but by and large, you have big, hardworking kids up here, and I think they capitalized on that kind of a recruiting base.
Yeah. Well, do you think an FBS move is out of the question, or is NDSU simply not interested in moving up?
Well, it's where you're at. You have listeners and viewers in Canada. This school is so close to the Canadian border. A lot of those FBS schools are not from around this area of the country. The closest is Minnesota, and as far as the big FBS schools, and the Big Ten's not going to take them. So the question is, where are you going to play? I don't know where you play. The Mountain West, maybe. You have to have a league, and I just don't see that happening right now. I don't know where you go.
Okay. Well, you get into some detail. You brought up Craig Bohl. You get into some detail about the turmoil surrounding sort of the announcement near 2013 season when he was taking the Wyoming job. Can you talk about some of the issues and maybe the bad blood that was in the locker room at that time?
Boy, I'll never forget that day. It was after a first-round playoff win, and later that night the news broke that Craig Bohl was taking this job at Wyoming. Well, they won that game, so they still had the playoffs yet to go, but Craig stayed on to coach the team until the end of the year, which happened to be until after the title game. So there was, a 3-4 week period there where you had the coaches that were going with Craig to Wyoming, the coaches that were staying, and there was tension. You go back, the players sensed it, certainly the coaches sensed it, that the guys that are going to Wyoming had to start recruiting players to go to Wyoming. And the coaches that were staying had to focus on recruiting players and retaining recruits that were coming to NDSU next year. So it was tension. It was tension. I'll never forget down in Frisco that year that Dom Izzo and I were outside the Bison locker room. Chris Kleiman was going this way, and Craig Bohl was coming this way. Craig looked that way, and Chris looked that way. So you're going, wow, they can't even say hi to each other as they're going by each other. And so you could just tell that, tension, I think, is the best word I can use. That being said, that team was so good, they coached themselves. They won that title easily.
Yeah. Well, do you think Craig Bohl can ever be successful at Wyoming?
I do. I think he's in the area of country where maybe he can capitalize on, again, the hardworking, rural kids at times. He's got to bring that style and make it work in the Mountain West. Again, the Mountain West is, it's the high-flying spread offense, Boise State, whip it all over the place. If Craig can somehow find enough players that will buy into that physical football, and if that physical football is enough to handle that speed, now that's the question at that level. We'll see in the next couple of years. I think this will be a big year for that philosophy.
Well, you mentioned you gave credit to Craig Bohl. What is the view of Craig Bohl by Bison fans today, do you think?
It's hard to gauge because when Craig left, he left. He hasn't really come back very often. He hasn't really been, and he doesn't really want to talk about his NDSU days, and I just think it's he's a type of guy who doesn't want to take credit for this for whatever reason. He said it's all about the AD, the president. I had little to do with it. I disagree. I think he had everything to do with it. But I think he's just one of these guys. He's got this focus to him that now whatever he did in the past is past, and now he's just worried about Wyoming. I think Bison fans have sensed that Craig's all about Wyoming now and not so much about NDSU. So I think the two sides have just moved on, the fans and Craig.
Well, with that said, Chris Kleiman, obviously, what does he bring as a successful coach? I mean, he's done a great job.
He has. He wins. I think a couple things. One, he's a little more personable than Craig as far as the players are concerned. I think he's a little more of a players coach. Still tough, but brings a little different personality. But who wouldn't? I mean, everybody's got their different personalities as a head coach. I think he's a really good evaluator of recruits. I think he can go into a living room and go, okay, I know I want you or I don't want you. And I think in this whole run here that NDSU has almost mastered recruiting because, yeah, it's one thing to be good, but they figured out, okay, that there's more to it than just being good and fast and strong. You got to be good in the classroom. You got to be a good teammate. I think they ask questions probably of the janitor in the hallway, you know, in the high school. Hey, is this kid is he a pain or is he a good kid down the hallway? I think they seriously ask those questions, and if there's a kid who has red flags of any type, whether it be a personality or thinks he's bigger than the world, then I don't think they're going to take him. I don't care how fast they are.
Well, with that said, what's your view of Carson Wentz and his future in the pros? You brought him up a little while ago.
He's getting, that's a great question because he's getting thrown into it as a rookie. So to start, you know, right away, that was unexpected. They were, you know, expecting him to carry a clipboard all year and learn under Sam Bradford, but you know, he's so smart. He's a 4.0. He's never gotten a B. He's blown the coaches away with his knowledge of the playbook and the ability to adapt to it and to learn from it. He's 6'6", 238, runs pretty well. He's got a great arm. What's there not to like? I was at the draft last spring, and he was just so impressive in all facets of the game, including off the field, just the way he handled himself, the maturity of it all. So I see why the Eagles liked him. And to be a good quarterback, I mean, it's going to be, I'll answer that question in 3 years because I just think it takes a while to really get into the pros. Aaron Rodgers sat for a while. I mean, sure. That's just the way it works.
Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Did people around here have an inkling that he had this kind of potential when he was backing up Brock Jensen?
Well, I know Craig Bohl did. Right away when he recruited him as a true freshman, Carson Wentz was running offenses and calling audibles in practice as a true freshman, which, you know, for Craig just goes, you know, kids don't do that, and that's just so unique. Now he came here, yeah, he had the height, but his strength just increased dramatically, and if he wasn't behind Brock Jensen, and again, how do you sit Brock Jensen, who is the all-time winningest quarterback in FCS history? He would easily have been a 4-year starter, but that's just how talent-rich they were at the time.
Yeah, really they were. Let's go back some to 2003 and 2004 and the move to Division I you mentioned. How big a risk was that at the time, especially as UND had started to sort of dominate the head-to-head series? And then was it a mistake that UND didn't follow with them?
Well, I think former President Joe Chapman probably deserves a lot of credit for that because he came here and he saw the academic profile was pretty good, but he saw the athletic profile was Division II. And you know, it took somebody to make the call. You know, it took somebody to have the guts to say, you know what, you're going Division I, because there was people in town. I call it just a. They just didn't think we were good enough. You know, it was a prevailing opinion that yeah, they were good in Division II, but boy, Division I seems like an awful big step. So it took somebody like Joe Chapman to say, no, it's not. And as we went around the country covering these games in 04, 05, 06, during those transition years, every time we came back, we being the people that cover the team, the media guys, we'd go, you know, Fargo's not such a bad place. I mean, there's a lot here. Joe Chapman, I think, is right. You know, you go to Statesboro, Georgia, Nacogdoches, Texas, you know, all these places that have these Division I schools, and you come back to Fargo and go, okay, I see where he's going.
Yeah. Well, but the other question was, did UND make a mistake by not moving? Of course, this is in retrospect. Mm-hmm. Hindsight's easy to talk about. So would it have been better, do you think, if UND had followed at the time?
I do. Dale Lennon, the coach of the time, really wanted to go. I know, Division I, he wanted to follow NDSU, but the powers that be did not. I was at a Division II meeting in Alexandria of the old North Central Conference, and that's when Joe Chapman wanted to go. Peggy Miller, the president of South Dakota State, wanted to go. Hank Brown, the president of Northern Colorado, wanted Division I. Charles Kupchella came out of the meeting. He was the president of UND at the time. And I got the sense that, no, he was against it. And I just think that set him back, I don't know, 5, 8, 9. Who knows? I mean, you got to follow your rival. You know, NDSU and South Dakota State, they followed each other. I think so. If they go up, then you have to go up. Yeah, I said it was a mistake at the time, so I'm not. It's not like it's hindsight's 20/20 here. I think a lot of people called it that. Hockey's at such a high level. Why not football?
Yeah. You also write about in the book ESPN's fascination with the college game day coming to Fargo. How much has that helped NDSU in recruiting?
Well, the set was right out here downtown, and I think when that open aerial shot, for those who saw it, the open aerial shot with downtown just absolutely packed with fans, 8,000-9,000 people. ESPN doesn't get that usually at their game day locations. They'll get maybe a few thousand, but to get that kind of response, and after that first show, I remember Kirk Herbstreit just goes, that was one of the best shows we ever had, and you're going, whoa, hold on here. You've been to Alabama, you've been to Ohio State all these times, but I think they go there so often that the fans there go, okay, there's the game day guys, whatever, let's get to the game. They're treated, I think, a little more with more of a rock star atmosphere, I would say, here than other places. Yeah, they love it here. I mean, maybe they'll come back. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we talk about recruiting. Where is NDSU's recruiting base? And it seems like every year 2, 3, 4 players go to the NFL.
Again, I'll go back to what Craig Bolt did is, you have some kids here, and I call them farm tough. These kids that just have the work ethic from rural North Dakota. This year there's, 4 offensive linemen from small town North Dakota. Well, a couple of those kids, after a Friday night football game, they'll go out and harvest till 2, 3 in the morning. You don't get that kind of work ethic in a lot of areas of the country, and so I think NDSU's really tapped into that. Another thing is, Ohio State or Toledo or Western Michigan, they don't come to North Dakota to recruit. It's just too far away. So you have that sort of base of kids that have that, just the ability to work from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. at night and not think about it. They'll get kids from other parts of the country. They go into Florida a little bit. They used to go into Texas a little bit, but it's Minnesota, it's Wisconsin, it's North Dakota, and a little bit of South Dakota. 90% of the team.
Yeah. What's the impact of Jim Kramer on this program?
MVP. I think, I really believe that. If I had $100 every time a player said Coach Kramer did this and did this, I'd probably retire by now. The players, I don't know how he does it, the players just have this affection for the guy. And he's the guy that works them to the bone, And keep in mind, okay, the coaches have him 3-4 months out of the year. Then they have him for spring football. But the head strength coach has him all year. So he's with them more than anybody. And he pushes them harder than anybody, any other coach. So I would say, and I don't know what he does, but he gets their attention, and he gets everything out of them. There's some, again, I believe this. I think he's been here the whole time too. I think he's the MVP of it. It's the story behind the story, how the guy was able to develop these players physically, and like we said earlier in the show, to play physical football. Somebody's got to do that. Landon Leckler came in here 6'7", 240 pounds. 2 years later, he's 6'7", 300, and quicker and faster and more agile. Somebody's doing some things in the weight room.
Sure, you're right. Well, what's been the reaction to the book so far? I know it's early, and what do you hope the reaction would be?
It's funny. So when I wrote this, I didn't know how to write a book, and I didn't know the process or anything, first-time author and all that. So I thought, when I'm done with it, okay, I'm done with it. Here you go. It's out. But the reaction just blew me away with, I think, the positivity I heard from really around the country of a lot of NDSU fans. Social media has been very kind to me. Yeah, I just, and book signings, I didn't know that would be a part of it. I didn't know signing a book. And I thought about it, I got about 10 books that are signed. I guess I never thought about that, but it's been pretty humbling, I guess is the best word I could use, and grateful that people have responded the way they have.
Yeah. Well, if people want more information or want to get a copy of the book, where can they go?
Amazon.com is a primary spot. It's on Kindle. So just go on Amazon.com and search Bison book or Kolpak book, and should be there.
Well, Jeff, thanks so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Today.
It's been great. I can do this all day. Yeah.
I hope you get to write another one soon.
Well, I hope to too.
All right.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for more. World-famous aviator Charles Lindbergh developed his love of nature and flying in his hometown of Little Falls, Minnesota. Today, his childhood home and family farm have become a place where visitors step back in time to experience life at the dawn of the modern age.
1916, Charles says they're going to spend their first winter here, and they've had to winterize the house. Now you're at the Lindbergh house. Come on this way.
This is where Charles developed his ideas as an adult. This is where he saw his first airplane and was reading all those stories during the First World War about fighter pilots and just the romance of the air. And it's where he really connected with the environment, growing up on a farm.
And at 7:52, the Spirit of St. Louis began to roll down the muddy runway.
In 1927, after Lindbergh made his famous flight, this house was abandoned. Nobody was living here. The family still owned it. They had moved all their possessions out because his mother had moved out in 1920 as well as Charles. And it was ransacked. The people in this area came to this place. Lindbergh was so famous, they just wanted to have a little piece of him. And as a result of all of this, there was a big rally in the community to preserve this house. They recognized its significance, and they worked with the family to create Charles A. Lindbergh State Park. And the park is named after Charles's father, C.A. Lindbergh, who was a congressman for the state of Minnesota out in Washington, D.C. for 10 years.
Come on this way.
The family donated the 110-acre farm with the house and the tenant house and the few remaining outbuildings to the state of Minnesota in 1931 for that purpose.
Watch your step, though.
In 1954, after his mother's death, Charles went through all of her possessions and started sorting things out. Anything that pertained to here on the farm in Minnesota came to the Minnesota Historical Society. And we've really tried to set it up in a way so that it's authentic to how it was when Lindbergh was a boy. That's the neatest part for me about this site is Lindbergh's involvement in the late 60s and early 70s before his death. He told MHS staff his stories of his youth and said this goes here and that goes there.
He does all the plumbing. The water is pumped through that big, majestic wood stove in the kitchen.
And so when you walk through the house today, it looks very much like it did in the 19-teens. Behind me is Evangeline's piano, which is a wedding present from her husband in 1901. We've got dishes in the kitchen, Charles's bed out on the porch. Some of his toys are on display either here in the historic house or over in the visitor center. So you get just that feel of walking into the past and what Charles's life must have been like as a youth.
Sorry, Mrs. Lindbergh, we've got lots to do today. We'll have to maybe do it later.
Once a month, we try and step back in time and really immerse ourselves in the world of Charles's youth. In 1918, Charles was running the family farm. He is released from school in order to do so to help supply food for the war effort. They have lived in this house for a whole year. And just it allows us to tell some of those key stories of his youth, of what it was like to be on a farm. What is it like to finally spend a winter in a house that wasn't designed to be inhabited in the wintertime?
Another interesting story is our well.
I think the public enjoys the stories about Charles, learning from his mother what this famous man was like as a boy, and that as a boy he wasn't that different than you or I as a child.
Your children carry firewood for your family, right? Yeah. Yes, of course you do.
That he played outside and got into trouble and all of these other different things that kids do, and that his world was changing so rapidly around him, that he grew up in an era of war. And what did that do to his life? How did that change him? How did that inspire him? You forget his roots. He was so large, so big. His flight came along right at the time that modern technology with the film industry and radio, and that's all you saw was that public face. And he was such a private person that you wouldn't have heard about his farm life unless you knew him from here in Little Falls as a youth.
Charles will split the firewood, and then I have some nice firewood to start my stove in the morning. But
I think a lot of historic sites do the living history because it connects the visitor with the past so much better than a textbook can.
They actually forget where they are and what year it is because it's just so intense.
To be able to come to the place where it happened, to walk through the halls, and to interact with characters who are portraying people from the past and can communicate that emotion, the deeper feelings behind just the facts, I think is what makes it come alive, and it's entertainment as well as education for the visitor.
Well, that's all we have on Prairie Post this week, and as always, thanks for watching.
Funding for Minnesota Legacy programs are provided by a grant from the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. And by the members of Prairie Public.